Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. With the market spooked and unemployment up, are Donald Trump's tariff U-turns damaging the US economy? After creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, the White House prepares to host its first ever crypto summit. And what will the takeover of its parent company mean for the high street giant Boots? Very good afternoon and welcome to Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey, on this Friday. Now, Donald Trump has always been clear he wants to make America great again, but has his flip-flopping over tariffs actually hurt the US economy? Well, the latest job data released this lunchtime, the US employment rate grew to 4.1%, slightly higher than expected, and it's yet to include the cull in government workers that's it's clearly been planned by Elon Musk. The reason, of course, we're talking about this, it is a Friday afternoon, and that essentially means Trump o'clock, if you like, because he is due to speak in the Oval Office very shortly. And we will, of course, bring you that live. One can accuse Donald Trump of many things. Not speaking in front of the media is certainly not one of them. We're not entirely sure what he's going to talk about inside the White House this afternoon, but as soon as he is speaking in that Oval Office, we will, of course, bring it to you here on Sky News. Well, earlier, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, speaking to our partner network, CNBC, tried to set out a positive outlook for the US economy, despite some of those numbers I've just reflected.
What we are trying to do is make free trade fair trade, because the trading systems have become incredibly imbalanced. You see it with these gigantic the trade deficits that we run. You see it with the big surpluses that other countries are accumulating. So we're looking at tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, government subsidies, and in the EU, some of these gigantic fines that they're putting on our tech companies just because they see a big pool of capital. And we're going to push back on those. And at the end of the day, President Trump's been saying tariff is his favorite word. I think reciprocal may be his second favorite word. And we're going to put this at the feet of our trading partners.
So we're going to have higher input costs forever.
So what, higher input costs forever? No, it's the tariffs are a one-time price adjustment, and everything else the administration's doing, we're not getting much credit. As of yesterday, energy prices were down 15%. Crude was down 15% since Inauguration Day. 10-year rates are down, mortgages are down. The spreads between the 10-year rate and mortgages have come in. So we saw we saw mortgage applications pop up last week. I think if we can keep on that trajectory, and Joe, the American dream is to be able to buy a house. We can't import houses. The Biden administration created this bad equilibrium where the top 10%, people in this room, probably most of the people watching this show, top 10% of Americans are 40 or 50% of consumption. And that is an unstable equilibrium. The bottom 50% of working Americans have gotten killed. We are trying to address that. We're trying to get rates down. And could we be seeing that this economy that we inherited starting to roll a bit? Sure. And look, there's going to be a natural adjustment as we move away from public spending to private spending. The market and the economy have just become hooked. We've become addicted to this government spending, and there's going to be a detox period.
There's going to be a detox period. That was the US Treasury speaking to CNBC a little earlier on today. Well, let's speak to Drew Pettit. He is a US equity strategist at Citi Research. Very good afternoon to you, Drew. First of all, what did you make there of what the US Treasury Secretary had to say? It was very much that they do have a plan. It's about rebalancing the economy. And interestingly, for the Republican Party, you might argue, redressing the economy for the poorest of Americans.
You know, what's interesting about that, Darren, you did not really hear him talk about the stock market being great. So there's a big difference between the US economy and the stock market. And it's something we've pointed out. You know, if this was the 80s, you know, thinking about the economy and GDP, well, there's your answer on the stock market. Fast forward to today, and we're talking about big international global businesses in sectors that aren't the same sectors that drive consumption in the United States. What he focused on was interest rates. And honestly, right now, it's hard to get yields down and the stock market up at the same time. So I think that's why we're seeing some volatility right now.
And we're seeing volatility too, aren't we? Because, you know, there was 151,000 jobs created in February. That is below expectations. In fact, the unemployment rate has risen a little bit. Consumer spending is not as good as it was. And there is concern about inflation. I mean, there are flashing lights when it comes to a US economy that has up until recently been incredibly resilient.
Yeah, I think that's the kicker. It has been very resilient. We're coming off of a really strong level. Some slowdown even before policy uncertainty was really expected. You know, policy uncertainty might drive some investment delay in some bigger projects, but there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit to really chop for US businesses. So again, this is all, I do believe, transitory in some sense, but at the end of the day, if you want markets to go higher for longer and to stay in a structural bull market in the US, you really need growth to kick back in.
In saying that, Drew, our ultimate question today, we're just about to hear from him yet again in the Oval Office, Donald Trump. You know, it's very early on, of course it is, 40, 50 days, whatever it is, since he got inaugurated again. But what is your assessment so far of his impact on the economy? Many would say his kind of going back and forth on tariffs. I mean, it's not exactly helpful, is it?
Oh, it's confusing. You know, it's funny, whether it's the media or clients, when they ask us, how do you think this is going to end? Our response is, we don't know.
It's entirely possible Donald Trump doesn't know either. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, when a lot of people can say, I don't know, and truly believe that, you get this type of action in markets. Look, if we find out what the end game is, even if it's not a positive one, at least we know how we can adjust from there. Markets are forward moving. We just need to figure out where we're going, and then we can move on.
OK, Drew, really appreciate your time this afternoon from Citi Research. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, staying with Donald Trump, the president is due to host the first ever White House crypto summit later today, having already announced plans for a strategic Bitcoin reserve. What else can we expect from an administration committed to making the US the crypto capital of the world? Well, earlier I spoke to tech investor and president of Ava Labs, John Wu, and started by asking him why this summit was being held in the first place.
I think it's actually very important, and it's the most important thing about this is that they are creating a dialogue with the builders and the creators in the space. I think for the first time, you know, crypto engineers, developers, entrepreneurs, the creators in the space have an opportunity to share their perspective with the administration. This hasn't happened before. And if you're going to have legislation in the space, you need the opinion of and the perspective of the builders. So this is very positive. That's the first step. The second step is there's going to be various specific conversations had at the table, and it will lay the foundation for further dialogue.
And it must be said, let's be honest about this, President Trump has become quite a convert to cryptocurrencies, hasn't he, in the last couple of years? I think initially he was quite skeptical. What has changed and why is President Trump seemingly now in favor of cryptocurrencies?
You're right. He was skeptical last time around, and he definitely has changed his opinion. I think it's probably one of two things. First off, he's mentioned in the past that he's actually used it and he understands it a little bit better. So kudos to him for being able to be flexible. And second of all, it became a large constituent in the United States, and it meant a lot in terms of incremental votes, but as well as, there was the Fair Shake Pact that meant, it raised as much as the Make America Great Pact in terms of supporting the right people in Congress, as well as President Trump, who will support the space.
And talk me through what happened yesterday, because he signed an executive order, didn't he, to essentially bring about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. What is that, John? And what does it mean, I suppose, for something like the US dollar, if you like?
So I thought the actual executive order that came out yesterday was actually very level-headed and responsible, especially compared to the previous week where there were a bunch of tweets about various possible assets into the crypto reserve. A strategic reserve has always been, the US dollar, some other currencies, some critical assets like gold and petroleum. And the reason you have that strategic reserve is, one, to provide a hedge against inflation, a supply buffer when deeply necessary, and also a general hedge to instability in your currency. And the only one that fit that criteria in terms of size, volume, and product market fit as being digital gold was Bitcoin. So for them to start it that way and do it without taxpayer dollars, just using the existing 200,000 that they have from forfeitures of fraudulent activity in the past, is a fantastic solution, I think, and a first step for going forward.
Are we really seeing here effectively, John, the coming of age, if you like, of cryptocurrency? I mean, for a long period of time, people have been quite down on it, suggested it's some type of Ponzi scheme that's not going to really last. It's now effectively got the heft of the most powerful man on the planet in support of it. Is this now a game changer for cryptocurrency?
He is putting the right people into positions that support the asset class. And that is very important, because if you have the right people in there, you ultimately have the right legislation. And you need some certainty in legislation. As far as the scams and all that, there's no doubt there are unfortunate incidents in the space, but it's like the internet or any other technology. Until the rules are clear, you're going to invite unsavory people. So we need to have certainty in regulation, a framework for how you tokenize. Pretty soon they're going to have a stablecoin bill, the Genius Act, that's going to be introduced to Senate. These are the things you need to give it proper guardrails so that only good actors are in the space.
Well, just very finally on that, we talk about good actors. There has been criticism, though, of both President Trump and some around him that they could personally gain from all of this, that this is not simply about a type of currency that they quite like, but that a lot of people around the Trump administration, around the Trump circles, are making quite a lot of money of all of this.
Yeah, obviously there are people who are complaining about that. On one level, some of that seems very unsavory, in my personal opinion. But with that said, nothing has been done that's illegal that I can see. And what's more important here is President Trump and this current administration have stuck to a few things. One, they have been very transparent. It's the reason why people are saying this so easily is because they're very transparent with what's happening. That's what the American people have wanted for a long time, some transparency, as opposed to the 10s and 20s, like the 10 years ago, 20 years ago, all of this, for the last decade or two, it's been very opaque, and no one knows exactly what's happening in trading of stocks and all of that based on their knowledge of bills, et cetera, et cetera. This is very transparent. He's doing exactly what he promised on the campaign. It's almost a relief in many Americans' eyes to see that a politician that campaigned is actually doing what he said he would do.
Okay, John, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Sky News.
Thank you, Darren.
Now, the US owner of the UK high street stalwart Boots has agreed to be taken over by a private equity firm in a deal that's worth some $10 billion. Walgreens Boots Alliance has seen its market value decline by nearly 90% in the past decade as it struggled with weak consumer spending and the rise of online pharmacies. Well, let's get the views of Shruti Tipatri Chopra, who is the editor-in-chief of Financial News and Private Equity News. Thank you for joining us. Just first of all, explain what's gone on here. Why the need to essentially sell this company to a private equity firm?
Thank you. So you wouldn't think of Boots as a retail red flag, would you? You know, it started out as this little shop in the mid 1800s in Nottingham, but it has struggled under the ownership of Walgreens, which has struggled a lot. You know, Walgreens used to be this big American behemoth valued at $100 billion, and now it's valued at only $9 billion. And the problems there have been the same: the rise of online shopping, not acting quickly enough in the face of changing consumer behavior and competing with the likes of Amazon and Walmart in the US, which are incredibly cutthroat on their margins. And this could mean trouble for Boots in the UK, because Boots has shuttered 300 shops in the past couple of years and has felt a bit unloved and underinvested in under Walgreens. You know, we have seen that private equity firms are very ruthless in when they take on retail brands. You know, they will raise money from institutional investors, but really slash and burn costs, and that could mean trouble for Boots. You know, we've seen this in the case of Body Shop or Asda or Morrison's or Legoland. There is a lot of uncertainty over Boots' future at the moment.
But Shruti, in saying that, we have seen Boots actually do quite well. I'm looking here at the last quarter of last year. Its sales up 8.1% compared to Walgreens' US sales, which were down at nearly 5%. I mean, Boots is still a relatively robust business here in the UK.
Absolutely, and it's really upped its beauty and skincare brand. You know, the just face-to-face customer interaction is something that works in its favour. You know, but there's also a big opportunity here for London, I feel, you know, if Boots remains the star of the high street. You know, we've all seen that the London IPO market has been struggling. There were fewer than 20 floats in the capital last year. That was like the smallest number since the financial crisis. So if Boots were to float on the London Stock Exchange, then that would be great, wouldn't it? You know, London Stock Exchange would have been credited with helping a very well-known brand thrive on the British high street. And
and London could do with that boost, couldn't it? Just very finally, I've also read today that, the Walgreens management, if you like, are trying to assuage Boots employees. There are a lot of stores across the UK. I think you said 1,800. I mean, there'll be tens of thousands of employees. What about their future?
It is very uncertain at the moment. You know, if you go by history, private equity firms are known to cut jobs. You know, this is how they operate. They come in, they trim the fat essentially. So I'm sure this is a stressful time if you're a Boots employee. So, but I guess it can be done, though. You know, Boots is a very, as you said, it's a thriving brand. It isn't doing as badly as Walgreens is doing in the US. So if it falls in the right hand in this country, who knows? You know, be thriving and very much relevant in today's times.
Okay, Shruti, thank you very much indeed for joining us live on Skype this afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, you're watching Business Live on this Friday. Up next, we're going to hear more about a new group committed to getting more women into leadership roles in the insurance industry. That is up next.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Maitai village on the front line.
Firing to civilian and they're burning our house.
we cross to the opposite side held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Very welcome back to Sky News. That is the White House, obviously in Washington, D.C. We are expecting to hear from President Trump in, we think, probably the next couple of minutes. This afternoon, he's threatened Russia with sanctions. He's also sent her a letter to Iran's Ayatollah seeking a new deal, it seems. He's also stopped all federal funding to South Africa, and he's due to host a crypto summit later on today. So it could be pick your choice on what he's going to talk about. We don't, frankly, know, but as ever, we will bring you that live here on Sky News when President Trump appears in the Oval Office. As we say, any moment now. Before that, though, on the eve of International Women's Day, a new leadership and networking group has been launched to help women in the insurance industry. Currently, women make up less than 7% of chief executives within the sector, 16% of chief financial officers, and just 11% of chairs. Well, the one behind this group is Chin Liao, who is the Chief Administration Officer at the global automotive tech company Solera and chairwoman of the Solera Foundation. Very good afternoon to you. First of all, why are these figures so bad is probably the obvious question here.
Good afternoon. The figures are bad because, as this is an old discussion we've had for many, many years. More than 50% of the consumers are women. So if all the decision makers are not women, then you have a biased design. So it's really that simple. Are you selling something your consumers really want?
And it seems that things have stalled, maybe even going backwards. What's the solution? How do you turn this around?
Well, it starts with you look into what is it you're trying to accomplish. Changes are not good. If you just keep saying we don't have enough chief executive officers at the top of the organizations, you will not fix that problem until you turn around and get back to, are we building them up? Are we really embracing it? Are we creating an environment that we openly talk about this?
And what's
that is...
No, just to say, what's the fundamental argument with people at home who say, well, you know, if the best people are in the best jobs, so be it. It doesn't matter about the gender. Why do you think that matters? Why gender matters?
Well, we live in a world where we do have half to the best of my knowledge. Therefore, ignoring the other half hasn't really done us enough wellness. And if you look at what we can do in the organizations where they have better representations of their consumer base, not only women, but other diversity backgrounds, you get a much better situation. Okay. And that is basic design principle, right?
Okay. Jing Liao, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but good luck with the campaign and indeed in trying to get equality, particularly in the insurance industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
International Women's Day tomorrow. That is it from me on Business Live for now. Back, of course, on Monday. Up next is the News Hour and the White House on Sky News. Goodbye.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.